I was helping a customer when my husband texted, "I'm leaving you. I emptied our account. Have fun running the business without money." What he didn't know, my name was still on everything. I'd built our small bakery from nothing with my husband Tom for 15 years. We'd started in our kitchen, expanded to a storefront, and finally had 3 locations across the city. I handled the customers, recipes, and staff while he managed the finances. At least, that's what I thought until that Tuesday morning when everything fell apart. What happened next would change both our lives forever, though not in the way he expected. The morning started like any other. I arrived at 5 a.m. to prep the day's first batch of pastries. Our main location was bustling with the usual morning crowd when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Tom, something about needing to talk later. I didn't think much of it as I continued serving our regulars, many of whom I knew by name after years of pouring their coffee and recommending pastries to match their moods. By noon, I noticed something odd. Our delivery of fresh ingredients hadn't arrived. When I called our supplier, they awkwardly informed me that our account had been closed that morning. Confused, I tried calling Tom, but he didn't answer. I checked our business account online only to find it completely empty. My hands began to shake as I scrolled through transaction after transaction, all withdrawn over the past week. The last withdrawal had happened just hours ago. That's when the second text came in. "I'm leaving you. Found someone who appreciates me. I've emptied our accounts, personal and business. The bakery is failing anyway. Have fun dealing with the mess." 15 years of marriage, dismissed in a text message. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Customers noticed my face draining of color as I clutched the counter for support. Mrs. Peterson, a regular for 12 years, came over and asked if I was all right. I somehow made it through the rest of the day in a daze, telling the staff we were having supplier issues. After closing, I sat alone in our flagship store, surrounded by the business we'd built together. Tears streamed down my face as reality sank in. Tom had left me personally and professionally bankrupt. Or so he thought. I remembered something important, something he'd clearly forgotten in his rush to destroy our life together. A detail that would change everything. When we'd opened our first location, both our names were on all the paperwork, the business license, the bank accounts, the lease agreements. As we expanded, Tom had taken over more of the financial aspects while I focused on operations, but I'd always insisted on keeping both our names on everything. "It's our business together," I'd said. He'd rolled his eyes but agreed. Now, years later, that simple insistence would prove to be my salvation. That night, I dug through our home office, searching for all our legal documents. There they were, 3 business licenses, all with both our names printed clearly. The property deeds for 2 locations we'd purchased outright, with both our signatures. Equipment ownership papers. Supplier contracts. While Tom had cleaned out our accounts, he couldn't erase my legal ownership of everything we'd built. My hands trembled, but not from fear anymore, from determination. I called Maria, our longtime friend and attorney, who'd helped us set up our business. "Can he do this?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Legally, no," she replied after I explained the situation. "He can't just fire you from a business you co-own. The money he took, that's theft, plain and simple. But getting it back won't be easy." She advised me to act quickly before Tom could sell assets or create more damage. "Document everything," she insisted. "And whatever you do, don't let him know you're fighting back yet." The next morning, I arrived at work with a new perspective. The staff could sense something was wrong, but I only told them we were having temporary financial difficulties. Behind my professional smile, my mind was racing with plans. I had no access to cash. Suppliers were calling about payments, and payroll was due in 3 days. I needed to move fast but carefully. Tom thought he'd left me helpless, but he'd forgotten one thing. I'd been running the day-to-day operations for years. I knew this business better than anyone. First, I went to our bank and explained the situation. The manager's face fell as I showed him the text messages and the transaction history. "This is clearly unauthorized business activity," he said, reviewing our account documents. "Since your name is on the accounts, we can freeze what's left and begin fraud proceedings." It wasn't much, but it was a start. More importantly, It would prevent Tom from taking anything else. Next came the suppliers. Many had worked with us for years, and I'd built personal relationships with them. I called each one, explaining our situation with as much dignity as I could muster. "I've been betrayed by my business partner," I said, not revealing it was my husband. "I'm working to resolve this and need a short grace period." Most were sympathetic, offering extended payment terms. One vegetable supplier even offered to continue deliveries on good faith. "Your sourdough saved my daughter's wedding last year," he reminded me. The staff was another challenge. I gathered them after closing and laid out the truth, minus the marriage details. "Our business partner has embezzled funds and abandoned ship," I explained. "I'm fighting to save our bakery, but I need your help." I promised transparency moving forward and asked for their patience with delayed paychecks. To my surprise, not a single employee walked out. Elena, our head baker for 10 years, spoke up. "We're with you. This place is our home too." That night, I returned to our empty house, exhausted but determined. I hadn't heard from Tom since his text, but social media had already provided answers. Photos of him and his much younger assistant on a beach somewhere tropical, using what appeared to be my money. The pain was still raw, but something else was growing stronger resolve. I opened my laptop and began documenting everything for the legal battle ahead. Tom thought he'd left me with nothing, but he'd actually left me with the most valuable asset, a business I knew inside and out. The next weeks were the hardest of my life. I moved into a small apartment above the bakery to save money and worked 18-hour days. Every morning began with reviewing finances, calling creditors, and strategizing how to keep afloat. The afternoons were spent doing what I'd always done, creating pastries, serving customers, and managing staff. But now I was doing it all alone, with the added burden of financial crisis hanging over me. I learned to negotiate payment plans, apply for emergency business loans, and ruthlessly cut costs wherever possible. We temporarily closed one location to consolidate resources. I sold my car and used the cash to cover part of payroll. The staff pitched in too, working extra shifts, bringing in supplies from their own kitchens when we ran short, even pooling tips to help with expenses. What Tom had meant to destroy was actually growing stronger in his absence. The customers noticed changes, but rallied around us. When I explained to a few regulars that we were going through business restructuring, word spread quickly. Soon, there were lines out the door as the community came to support us. Local businesses ordered our pastries for meetings. A nearby coffee shop that had always seen us as competition reached out to partner on deliveries. The local newspaper ran a story about supporting small businesses during difficult times, featuring our bakery prominently. Meanwhile, Maria was building our legal case. The evidence was overwhelming. The unauthorized transfers, the abandoned business responsibilities, the breach of partnership agreements. "We've got him," she assured me, "but legal proceedings take time." I nodded, knowing I couldn't wait for the courts to save the business. Every day was a battle for survival, and I was fighting it largely alone. Yet somehow, against all odds, we were staying afloat. What Tom never understood was that I'd always been the heart of this business. Topic 5. The Turning Point. Almost 2 months after Tom's disappearance, I received notice that he'd been served legal papers at a resort in the Bahamas. His response came swiftly, a cease and desist letter from an expensive attorney, claiming I was harassing him and that he had legally dissolved our partnership. The letter demanded I stop using his business name and vacate his properties immediately. I forwarded it to Maria, who called me laughing. "He's panicking," she said. "He knows he's in trouble." That same week, I made a discovery that changed everything. While reorganizing the office, I found a hidden folder on our shared business computer. Financial records Tom had kept separate from our main accounting system. As I reviewed the files, my blood ran cold. For years, he'd been skimming from the business, hiding profits, and preparing for his exit. But he'd also been careless, leaving a detailed paper trail of his fraud. Even more shocking were emails between him and his girlfriend, dating back 3 years, discussing their plans. Armed with this new evidence, Maria revised our legal strategy. We weren't just seeking the return of stolen funds anymore. We were building a case for criminal fraud. This isn't just about divorce or civil disputes, she explained. This is intentional long-term embezzlement. The district attorney's office agreed to review the case, and suddenly Tom's tropical escape didn't seem so permanent anymore. With renewed determination, I focused on rebuilding. We were still struggling financially, but the bakery was stable enough now that I could think beyond day-to-day survival. I developed new recipes, expanded our catering services, and started a small online delivery option. Every decision was mine alone to make, and I discovered I was better at the business side than I'd ever realized. Without Tom undermining me, something I now recognize he'd been doing for years, my confidence and creativity flourished. 4 months after Tom's disappearance, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Tom, sounding less confident than his legal threats had suggested. "Look," he began without greeting. "This has gotten out of hand. My lawyer says we should settle this quietly. I'll give you the small location if you drop all claims, and the police report." I almost laughed at his offer. 1/3 of a business I already legally owned half of. "No," I replied simply and hung up. The calls continued over the next week, each offer slightly better than the last. Tom's tropical funds were apparently running low, and his attorney's fees were mounting. Meanwhile, our bakery was not just surviving, it was beginning to thrive again. We'd reopened our 3rd location, sales were up across the board, and a feature in a national food magazine had brought in tourists specifically looking for our signature pastries. The business Tom had claimed was failing was now more successful than ever. Maria advised me to avoid direct communication with Tom, but to document every attempt he made to contact me. "He's building our case for us," she explained. "Each call shows his consciousness of guilt." She was right. His offers were becoming increasingly desperate. In his last message, he actually suggested we put this behind us, and offered to come back and help run things. As if I needed his help now. The legal case was moving forward, though slower than I'd hoped. The wheels of justice turned gradually, but they were turning. The district attorney had officially charged Tom with multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. His assets were frozen, and his passport was flagged. The tropical paradise he'd escaped to was becoming a trap. Meanwhile, I continued building the business he'd tried to destroy, making it stronger and more successful than it had ever been under his management. 8 months into my new reality, I received an unexpected visitor at the bakery, Tom's mother. We'd always been close, but she'd disappeared from my life after Tom left. "I'm sorry," she said, tears in her eyes. "I had no idea what he was planning." She explained that Tom had told his family I was the one who left, taking business funds with me. Now that charges had been filed, and the truth was becoming public, she'd come to make amends. She brought with her something invaluable, documentation of additional accounts Tom had set up in his parents' names, using our business funds. He said it was for tax purposes, she explained, clearly devastated by her son's deception. We never thought to question it. This new evidence was the final piece Maria needed to complete our case. Tom hadn't just stolen from me. He'd used his own parents as unwitting accomplices in his fraud. The revelation spread quickly through our social circle. Friends who had distanced themselves, perhaps believing Tom's version of events, began reaching out. Business associates who had been hesitant to work with me now approached with new opportunities. Local business owners who had known us for years stopped by to express support. The narrative was shifting dramatically, and with it came unexpected opportunities for growth. A regional bakery chain approached me about a possible partnership. A cookbook publisher reached out about featuring our recipes. A local business investor expressed interest in helping fund an expansion. The business Tom had tried to destroy was now positioned for growth beyond anything we'd achieved together. And through it all, I maintained the same quality and personal touch that had built our reputation in the first place. Success, I was discovering, was the best revenge. Almost exactly 1 year after Tom's fateful text message, I received word that he was returning to the country to face charges. His money had run out, his girlfriend had left him, and his options had dwindled to nothing. Rather than facing extradition, he'd agreed to surrender himself to authorities. Maria called to share the news. He's accepted a plea deal. full restitution of all stolen funds plus penalties. And he's facing jail time. The money would help, of course, but I realized something surprising. I no longer needed it to survive. The business had not only recovered, but was thriving under my sole leadership. We now had 4 locations, a robust online presence, and even a small wholesale division supplying local restaurants. The staff had grown from 15 to 32 employees, many of whom had stood by me during the darkest days. What Tom had intended as my destruction had become my renaissance. On the day of his court appearance, I decided not to attend. I had a business to run, new recipes to develop, and employees who depended on me. Tom's chapter in my life was closing, but my story was continuing to unfold in ways I'd never imagined. That afternoon, as I trained a new baker on our signature sourdough technique, I realized I hadn't thought about Tom in days. The pain that had once consumed me had transformed into something else: strength, independence, and pride in what I'd accomplished. That evening after closing, I gathered the staff for an announcement. We're opening a 5th location. I told them to cheers and applause. And I'm renaming the company. The business licenses that had once saved me by bearing both our names would now bear only mine. As I unveiled the new logo, I felt a sense of completion. The business wasn't just surviving without Tom. It was becoming something new and better. Something entirely mine. He had tried to break me with a single text message. Instead, he had set me free. This journey from betrayal to triumph isn't just a story. It's a blueprint for anyone who's ever been underestimated or discarded. When life knocks you down, remember that your greatest strength comes from within. The skills, determination, and resilience you've built over years don't disappear just because someone else fails to value them. What would you do if you were suddenly faced with your worst fear? Would you crumble, or would you stand up and fight? The choice is always yours. But remember that the greatest success stories often begin with someone saying, "You can't." Those words aren't a barrier. They're a challenge waiting to be overcome. Your life's path isn't determined by others' actions, but by your response to them. Every setback can become a setup for an even greater comeback if you refuse to accept defeat. What seems like the end of your story might actually be just the beginning of a far better chapter you never imagined possible. If this resonated with you, take a moment right now to reflect on your own untapped potential. Are you letting someone else's opinion limit what you believe you can achieve? It's time to reclaim your power and write your own success story. Subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell to join our community of resilient, determined individuals who are rewriting their futures every single day. Because the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving in ways your doubters never thought possible.